Hello, everyone, and welcome to the American Scouser podcast. Monday night, we are back in action as always. Same time, same place, same freaking host. I am Timuchin here in Chicago. I'll do the weekly weather update. It's crappy out there, but it is November. For November, I guess it's not too bad, but rainy, crappy, 60s. It is what it is. Gearing up for the big winter over here. But an awesome weekend in more ways than one. Liverpool, Fenerbahce, you name it, all kinds of drama all weekend. That's why the voice is not all there. I did lose it a little bit yesterday at the end of the Fenerbahce game, but I'll try my best. Gally is with us. Gally, what's happening?
No, not too much, not too much. Weather was shitty here in New England today, but all in all, good day. Start a new job. Always good when you have a first for the first time in 20 something years. So didn't sleep too much last night. Was a little nervous, a little anxious, a little awkward about it, and then got to the office and realized, what was I worrying about? It's me. Everybody loves me.
Okay, and now everybody in the office is worried.
Yes,
everybody
very much so. They're questioning whether or not they want to come back on Wednesday. They heard I'm not coming in tomorrow. They were completely okay with tomorrow. Wednesday, different question.
Yeah, your employers are the ones who can't sleep tonight, probably saying, "What the hell did we just do?" But Bickler is here. More importantly, Bickler's stash is here. What's happening, Bickler?
What's going on? I also had first day of school vibes and started a new role today at my company. If anybody knows what starting a new role feels like, it's just basically like the first day of school and learning stuff all over again, plus doing your previous role. So that'll be like that for probably another month or two. And then hopefully I will hate life a lot less.
Yeah, a lot of those. I know this is not your thing anymore.
Yeah.
But yes, been there, done that, even though it's not your responsibility anymore. So today, by the way, we're approaching a milestone. Ryan is with us. Sergi, as everybody gathers on over here, Ryan says 24 hours before impending doom. By the way, before I forget, we did reschedule the if you want to watch our impending doom live, we did reschedule the panel show to Wednesday night, figuring everybody will be watching the dude in front of the screen looking at a map instead of just waiting for the final results. It's not like
I think I'd rather be watching you idiots talk about idiot stuff.
Yeah, I know.
Those idiots talking about two other idiots getting ready to do idiot stuff.
Exactly. So happy to spend an hour, though. Thanks for joining us. But as we gear talking about the impending doom, next Monday will actually be our 300th episodes. Bickler was asking me a week or so ago. So today is actually the 299th episode that we've done a Monday podcast. So that's quite the streak we got here. And, this goes all the way back to the days where people were lucky enough not to see us and only hear us. So like the old Skype days and stuff like that. But I did find, and I will probably bring more of these gem videos up, but we have come a long way in terms of, I don't know if we have come a long way, but
not the production has come a long way.
Yes. Because
I think that's just technology.
Yeah, we're only aging and getting worse.
It truly is an effort, that's for sure.
But so I did bring this clip. It's one of my favorite clips because it's just Bickler in a nutshell, as always. But this is way back when I was doing fantasy, so we know this is old. So this is probably when we first started the video, I think. So I'm assuming at least 2.5 years ago or so. So I figured I would bring this for all time's sake, and hopefully for the 300th episode. I'm hoping. Is that 4 years ago? Really?
I'm pretty sure I got on this thing. It was 3.5. I've been with you. We've been 3.5 years every Monday, the three of us.
God damn. Not only I feel old, I also feel depressed now. But I
wait till you see how much younger you look in this video.
Younger, thinner. I was like,
you got a darker mustache, a little bit darker beard. Yep.
Still have life in your eyes,
Yeah,
Bickler doesn't have a porn mustache. A lot of things are positives.
Okay, let me play this through. And just our backgrounds, the lighting, sound, you name it. Not to mention the story itself is us in a nutshell here. Necessary pet drama, which we'll talk one day about why we have called that, why he has called that team on This Is a Pet Drama. It is the stupidest. It's
Best name ever.
It is so Bickler. So I guess we might as well cover it. So Bickler and I were talking as we annually visit Outer Banks with my family, and then we like share it with another family as well, Angie's relatives actually, and then their daughter comes and they have like a German Shepherd. And that thing is like a freaking beast, by the way. It's just ridiculous. Whips around his tail like a freaking. So anyway, so I was telling Bickler about that. So who visited us in the house actually, and I told him that like they bring the dog, and obviously we bring Stitch. Everybody who listens to the podcast, I'm sure knows Stitch by now. So we bring Stitch, and there's like a lot of tension because Stitch, even though he can only lick people to death, wants to get protective of the household, doesn't want another dog hanging out with the girls or us and stuff, wants to be the one on the top floor, whatever. And their dog is the same way. And they have like a little baby now, so he's protective. So I told him there's like a lot of growling and, one upstairs, one divided. So I told him there's a lot of unnecessary pet drama in the house when we go there. And this, I'm telling you, I told him this
It's so good.
June or May. So the fantasy league starts in like August, and he's like, "Oh, you got to check out my team name," and he has named this freaking team Unnecessary Pet Drama. Unnecessary. I mean, you look at that background and stuff. First of all, yes, we're a lot younger. Brian Shelton says Gallo looks like how we described Tyler Morton. It's good to see, me moving away from the huge machine that's right next to me now instead, and finally Gally getting out of his childhood bedroom.
I do you guys like that? Remember I had to get that, I had to take that Bobby flag and put it over all the boxes because it looked like Kelly just shopped on Amazon all day long. There were just literally boxes of Amazon shit. So I'm like hanging freaking stuff up and like, oh God. Oh, COVID.
Yeah, it looks like he's covering a body in the background over there. And Bickler, we see the kitchen in the background where all the magic happens.
Yeah, it definitely looks a lot less like Blair Witchy now on my side. So
Gally hasn't aged at all, says Cersei, and he's waiting for me to make a breaking announcement about he has no more energy left, and then go work for Red Bull. That's kind of like my plan over there. But yes, I'm hoping like I can bring some more comedy next week to our 300th episode, which should be kind of cool. It is quite the achievements, and it is quite shows a lot of patience on our parts, on the audience's parts, and all that kind of stuff. So let's get to the weekend. Let's talk a little Liverpool over here. An awesome weekend. I mean, Gally, I don't think, even if I asked you to paint a great scenario for the weekend in terms of like us, Arsenal, City, and stuff, even then, I don't think we would be this wild. You would be like losing points. You wouldn't dream that they would both lose. So it kind of worked out perfectly.
Yeah, I never would have said both of them losing. Maybe one. I think maybe I would have said the way Arsenal's playing, maybe they go to Newcastle and draw. And that sounds great. And maybe City gets pushed to the limit and something crazy happens at the end and they give up a goal and they end up dropping some points. But, for both of them to not only lose, but to arguably both be outplayed by an inferior team, I think was a bigger story for me personally of why I believe in it a little bit more. And we're going to talk a lot about Liverpool's performance. There were a lot of good things and there was a lot to improve upon.
Yeah.
But I almost feel in some ways like that almost makes the weekend even better. And I know it sounds like that's probably the homer in me to say when the result is a 2-1 win. But in a lot of ways, like they both drop points and lose, don't look good, and there's more doubts kicked in. Villa drops points, which adds more doubts. Chelsea doesn't even maximize all their points. And Liverpool just keeps grinding and finding ways to get results, even when they're not at their best. And I forget who it was that said it, like, City's not out of this. Arsenal isn't dead yet. And Liverpool doesn't have this title won. But Liverpool isn't even playing great yet. And they have a lead. This is really, really scary if they start to figure this out. And I do think this Liverpool side is going to get better. And I said to Bickler on the Premier League show, I really hope that they see this as an opportunity and invest in January fill in some of the holes of the squad and attack this campaign, because I think there's a legitimate shot at running down a Premier League title. And I wouldn't have said that 3 weeks ago when we were top of the table. But I actually believe it today, top of the table, based on what I've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get our hopes up like too much and set us ourselves up for disappointment, Victor. But I think more impressive and more pleasing was the fact that, one, we did come back from being down to win, which, you know, we don't want to make a habit of again like we used to. But I mean, not to mention Ferdi got his goal. So that was a good thing. It was a win-win-win. Ferdi got his moments, but we still won. But Ferdi still got his moment. I was happy for him. But I think more importantly, like, we saw that this team coming back. And I thought that game showed a lot of character and determination of the old Liverpool to go in and win the game. And also, I think it kind of like underlines the fact that, you know, like Gally's saying, like a month ago, we were like, well, we had an easy schedule and stuff like that. We were saying it. Everybody was saying it, and rightfully so. But I think it also shows that there's really nothing easy when it's Premier League going away and stuff like that, because we played Bournemouth. I know we played them at home, but we played some games that, yeah, on paper could be easy, but winning them, like a Crystal Palace away, on paper, if you look at the ranking standings, it might not be that impressive. But in the grand scheme of things, you got to get the 3 points one way or another, and we've done that.
Yeah, I don't know. This one, obviously the weekend results all lining up are great. I think my takeaway from this thing is, like, not only did we grind out a win, I felt like this team could have had a moment that sort of shapes its season. And what I mean by that is, like, I got this feeling kind of like when Mo scored the winner. Sometimes you have these transcendent moments throughout a season that kind of shape things. It felt like this has the potential to be that moment for this team, because it almost felt like this team has so much newness to it, so many new faces and so many new roles and so many new tactics. It felt really poetic for Mo to kind of lead this team into the next sort of phase or next iteration of what Liverpool is as a football side. And I kind of felt that. Like, I kind of felt like the one constant through the side, like, from an attacking standpoint, and really the face of Liverpool scoring, like, really sort of had a key moment that took this side into that sort of next phase. And I felt like he kind of did it with Nunez under his wing throughout the entire match. So, like, it felt like a really big moment. And, you know, like, I think a lot of people are making things out of, like, what he said after the game and trying to play that into the contract thing, because that's what people are interested in right now, and that's what's selling. But to me, it sounded like a moment that just really meant a lot to Mo, because I think that, like, you know, I think all of this noise, I think he does best when all of this noise isn't there and he doesn't have to focus on anything outside of football. And I think for this moment, he got to focus on football again.
See, that's interesting you said that, actually. We never got around to it this morning. I brought it up, but then the topic went somewhere else when we were doing the morning show with Mateusz. Like, we totally went on a tangent because that's what we do on Mondays. But we talked about, you know, I brought it up on the screen, the Instagram post that, you know, Bickler is referring to Gally. And yeah, I did, you know, a lot of talk was made out of it, contract, pay him the money, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And I see a lot of people angling like, if you were anti-FSG, this is a great opportunity to kind of blame everything and say, you know, all of this, the ambition, blah, blah, blah. But how do you take that? Because I never thought of Bickler's perspective, because Mo has been there and done that. So maybe as a player, he feels what a great, like, an important moment that was, and some kind of like a defining moment in a season, because it was a turnaround. And how the weekend, because if we end up with a draw, which I would have settled for when we were 1-0 down, to be honest with you, knowing the other two lost. But he knows, like, how, you know, some of these games, when you look at the end of the season, could be the game that won you things.
Yeah, and I think he knows his role in it, and I think he's reveling in playing for Arne Slot. And I think that's part of the reason why we're hearing the angling for the contract and the comments in the Instagram post, right? Like, I didn't take it like he was saying, I'll never forget how it feels to score goals in this stadium. It felt like a foreign player once again using words that aren't first language to them when they're describing something, and then it coming across to English people who can dissect every single word that they say, and then be like, well, he's trying to leave. No, I think what he was saying is did you not hear the place? Yeah, it felt special when I scored that goal. And no matter what happens, I'll never forget what that feeling feels like. Like the fact that within an hour, that was used as a way for pay that man his money memes is just another ridiculous backhanded option of folks trying to take shots at him. They blame administration when things aren't going the way they want or the players they want aren't being signed. But when those players are being signed, they're the smartest administration ever. So Edwards was brilliant for bringing in Salah for 35 million, but he's a moron for not wanting to pay him 500,000 at 35 years old. There has to be a middle ground there. And until we know what these negotiations are, can't we just enjoy what we're watching? Because to me, the player is finally enjoying playing at Liverpool again, which is the only reason, in my opinion, people should be talking about Mo Salah. And the difference of his attitude is what is a difference from what I saw the last couple years. And that, to me, makes me question whether or not it isn't a smart decision. But I just think that we get too caught up in the clickbait stories, whether it's transfer season, contract season, or the emotional investment. I think you can have an opinion, but we don't know what's happening behind the scenes. And until we get a little insight, what else will we know?
Yeah, I mean, and maybe that's why. I mean, I guess that's what you can blame things on. Maybe the fact that, I mean, we talked about this before, how long this has taken and why it hasn't taken care of earlier and all that kind of stuff, along with the fact that maybe a little bit more transparency would shut these things off. But clearly the club doesn't care. And more importantly, it doesn't feel like the players care as much either, because they're not really bringing a lot of transparency either. And they're probably being sick of getting the same questions asked over and over again. I mean, is it part of us then, Bickler, like all these things coming up, like we want something to worry about? So let's just worry about the future kind of a thing, because why not enjoy the ride that we got going right now? Because maybe that's why the players are all in it, but it feels like people are looking for stuff to worry about.
I just think people are afraid of change, right? So I think when you look at a player like Verge and Trent and Mo, who have been here forever and part of the success, they've been to the mountain of this club. They've been to the pinnacle of every achievement that we've rode on that journey with. And now you're going to tell me that they're not going to be there anymore? I think people just have a hard time with that. You know what I mean? I think it's like an emotional attachment to players that you have experienced highs and lows with, right? Especially when they've been big parts of that achievement. So I think a lot of times, like, I think there's a significant mental hurdle that a lot of people have to get when you think about Liverpool scoring goals consistently and in volume without a Mo Salah in that side. Like, it's a bit of a leap for me. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think, like, just people assume that, like, A, they're not players on this team capable of picking up where he left off and scoring goals in volume. Or B, we don't have a plan B in place that's suitable or better. Like, because I think a lot of times people just, like, don't come to terms with the fact that, like, at some point, even the Tom Bradys get too old to do what they're best at, right? Yeah. Even the people that, like, physically defy the statistics and odds of what your physical body can do over time. Bottom line is he's a pace-driven, like, right winger. At some point, the bottom drops out of that. And when it does, it's steep. And to Gally's point, Edwards is a business guy, and he built this team by maximizing, like, value. And you don't do that by sinking a ton of financials into a sinking asset. Now, great thing, Mo is still performing great. We don't know when the bottom comes out, but is this team willing to give Mo what he wants for 2 or 3 years? That's the other thing. Like, a lot of people just assume that Mo is cool staying with what he's at. Maybe he wants more money. At the end of the day, back to Gally's original point, we can't control any of that. We don't know any of that. So let's just enjoy the football that's on the pitch now.
Yeah, exactly. And because, I mean, there is a lot to enjoy. I'm going to bring Nick's comment too. Brian says the worry is no real replacement. But we were just talking about it this morning too. You look at the squad, there's a lot of youth in the squad right now. I mean, especially like in the midfield and stuff like that. Even up top, you got like Nunez, Gakpo, Diaz. It's not like Diaz is old and stuff like that. So there is a lot of youth. And there is no way you're going to have another younger version of your starting 11 in the same qualities sitting behind and just like waiting, like break glass when these guys get too old, kind of a thing. I think if you have most parts in piece, I understand that, like some of the like Mo and Van Dijk are very, and you can argue Trent are like very important and crucial to what we do and the roles they play and stuff like that. But so are some of the other players. But I wish, we did kind of like enjoy it a lot more. Nick says, I don't know if I agree with this. We've been tough to watch. Do you find us tough to watch? I mean, I guess I was going to ask you that, so I'll combine the questions, Gally, that I feel like sometimes we do start the games a bit. It feels like we get more physical as the game goes. Like we're kind of like testing it out in the beginning, seeing what the other team does, and then we kind of get more physical in the second half, or something changes and stuff like that. But having said that, I don't know what Nick is comparing to, but at least we're not conceding within the first 5 minutes every freaking game like we were last season, when people not complaining that we were tough to watch.
I guess I don't understand what makes us so tough to watch. Is it as free flowing and as hectic and energetic as the brand of football we had over the last decade? No. I'd argue that over 13 matches, the results are at a much, much better, a more sustainable and controllable long-term plan. And to be honest, this is what the club wanted. They didn't want another helter-skelter manager, or they would have just kept Pep Linders here to keep running Klopp's system with Klopp's players. They want it to change because they wanted the game to follow today's game. And unfortunately, this is what City did. City has bored people to winning the Premier League year after year. So I just don't understand it. Maybe they want higher octane. Maybe they want more clear-cut chances. To me, our finishing numbers are better this year than last year. We're creating less chances, scoring more goals. We're conceding less. We're securing more points per game. To me, those are all things that I'm excited to watch. And we're at the top of the Premier League. We're at the top of the Champions League. To me, this looks like a club that progressed. And I know that just pains people to hear. But we look like we're moving forward. And that should be something we're all excited about, not negative against, in my opinion.
I mean, Nick says, and this is what we do, right? Like we sleepwalk the points. I feel like I would argue, Bickler, that actually because of our control, we kind of, and because we don't go out of control in our pressing or like kind of over the top and stuff like that, we play a little bit to the part where we also make sure we don't get the other team to play. So I think when we do that, obviously makes the other team look poor. But we do this whenever we play somebody. Like when we played Bournemouth and beat them, it was, it's an easy schedule. We're going to get 3 points. And then they go, beat City and stuff. So we always feels like diminish our achievements. I would argue that some of the teams don't look as good when they play us, because part of our design now is to make sure we don't let them play as well while we try to control and do our own thing, as opposed to the past where we do our thing and then, we'll win if we do our thing and we just kind of go full speed. And if we're not clicking, that lets the other team kind of like play a lot more because we don't have the control.
So I'll agree with one thing. I think at the end of the day, I'm just going to paraphrase, I think what Nick's getting at is like the system is boring comparatively, right? I think under Klopp, very dynamic, high up, pressing hard, trying to predicated on winning that ball in the final third. What does that do? Creates loads of chances, also puts you in a spot to concede loads of chances, right? So it's almost like a basketball game where it's up and down. This is much more controlled. So in that case, I kind of get where Nick's coming from. But I think for most of us, it's a nice break. I think more importantly, as you look at a league, to Nick's point, where everybody looks like they're struggling, I can't be convinced that doesn't have anything to do with the amount of football that's being played nowadays. And I think that if you're playing this many games with the squad that you have, the best thing you can do is stay healthy. And I think the system does that.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, do you agree, Gally, that the overall quality of play is lower compared to, let's say, last season across the board?
No, I think the quality of play has increased. I think the attacking players look more fluent. I think you're seeing an improvement in Nunez. I think you
Oh
saw an
no, I'm
improvement in.
talking about the
Oh,
Premier
I
League in
apologize.
general, not us.
Sorry. I thought you were talking about us specific, like compared to Klopp.
No. I think because like what Nick and Bickler are saying, it's almost like the opposition is not all that either. So even though we're not going full speed, we're still able to get the 3 points, kind of a deal.
Yeah, I actually do. I mean, I've said that before, and that's what's funny. It's like I think me and Nick might have thought I was disagreeing with him. I'm just talking about specifically around our play. I do think the league is down, and I've said this before. I think this league is a much, much weaker league. Now, we just saw a weekend where two sides took big scalps, right? Like Bournemouth wins against City, Newcastle beats Arsenal. But when you look at the bottom of this league, as poor as it is, I mean, what is it? 3 wins total? The bottom 6 sides combined? It's something like that. Like it's abysmal. 6, 7 sides have 5 wins. For me, that comes across as something that is starting to sway the numbers a bit, because I don't think this is, to steal the advertising, the most competitive league in the world anymore. I genuinely don't. And I think for that reason, I think Nick is probably on to something, that the overall play in the league isn't where it was years ago. But I think that has more to do with some of these bigger teams getting bigger and bigger. And I know Nick made the comment, but, it does kind of feel like these teams are gearing up towards a really big, important league that's even bigger than their domestic leagues.
Yeah, because I think what has happened is, it's the bigger clubs, and now you can add some of these other guys, like in the top 6, maybe, are getting deeper and deeper because they need to. Because it goes back to what Bickler is saying: the amount of games, the number of games they play, these teams feel like they need deeper squads. So, okay, so this means, the level of the squad for the teams below you are going less because obviously they're going to these top teams. And it all goes back to give us another 10 years. By the time we get our like 600th episode or something like that, we'll be recapping the Super League weekend and see how that's went about. Because sadly, I mean, I think, everybody in the comments is agreeing too, for the most part, that we are headed that way, because we are like, these teams are kind of almost like starting to build super teams where, I mean, we're complaining that there's not another Mo behind Mo. What the hell is going on, kind of a thing? Well, I mean, we're approaching that where you're going to have another Mo behind Mo, and then good luck to the other teams. Because you look at some of these other teams, yeah, I mean, the bottom of the league, but you can still argue that there's a lot of talent on these teams. But, like Bickler is saying, they might be a lot more leggy, and they don't have the depth to be able to keep up with the rotation that the big boys do. So let's get to the weekend. The starting 11, I don't think we had a lot of problems with it, Bickler. I don't know if you did. The slow start, is it just performances? Is it like how we kind of like lined up on the pitch? What do you give that to? Because it does feel like I say, like when we first start the game, sometimes until we wake up, it's not as physical. And then when we're not physical, we kind of lose that midfield.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I don't know what the slow start was. I typically think I think sometimes it just takes a little bit for tired legs to get going. And I do think that we've approached the point, and I know that Brighton played midweek, but they played with an entirely different side than midfield. I think our midfield is starting to look like the legs are being run off it. And I do think that is a little bit of a concern. I do think that's a contributing factor, the slow start. But I still think even with the slow starts, I don't feel like this is a side that comes out and immediately can concede consistently within the first 10 minutes of the match, like we saw last year. Last year, you were almost guaranteed that if you didn't go down within 10, you had 3 or 4 scares, right? Legitimate scares. And that doesn't feel like this side. So I think we've got some definite pros there with this. My big question with this side is, can it play from behind, right? And I think the thing that I was most encouraged about was not only was this side able to come back from being down, but I thought we made tactical changes to do it. So it wasn't like the system was just the players in the system were good enough to do it. Like the system became good enough to do it through the changes. And that was the one question I had about Arne Slot. I think he answered it for me this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree with this with Nick. His Dutch pessimistic attitude is suited for me as well, because like the way he approaches things, and I was like, such a such fresh air. Another guy who's pessimistic like me, kind of a deal. So going back to that though, and I think that's why when we were talking about this earlier, that's what made this win, and maybe that's what why Mo was saying that too, because you were able to bring some people off the bench and make some changes that enabled you to do tactical changes. And not only that, because of this good rotation going out, you're getting some good performances throughout. Whereas in the past, Gally, we did have the standard issue starting 11. So when you brought somebody in, it was kind of like feast or famine, because they hadn't played for ages. So you never knew what the hell you were going to get.
Yeah, I think we're seeing more rotation to the starting 11, even if it's only one or two tweaks here or there. I think we're also seeing the manager make big shouts. Look, we all knew when we saw Robertson starting the League Cup game midweek against Brighton. The manager was basically letting them know the performance last weekend against Arsenal wasn't good enough, and we're going to be going in another direction on this weekend when we get to the weekend. And Simicast's going to get his shot. And in my opinion, he took his shot, and I expect him to start next weekend in the league against Villa. And I expect Robertson to be playing tomorrow against Leverkusen.
Yeah.
And if things don't change, I expect Simicast to be the starting left back for a little bit. And I like that from what Arne's doing. I really do. And, Paul made the comments all summer. These tactics are great. Up 1-0, seeing out a match 2-0. Show me what happens when we're down. We've now seen 2 or 3 times this year him make tactical changes to both the formation and the players on the pitch at halftime or early in second halves that have made major swings in the momentum, and not just in the match. He made the changes at the half that led to them getting the momentum 10 minutes in, that led to the 2 goals in 3 minutes, and then it was good night the lights. And, we can't go too much further on without talking about the call to bring in Joe Gomez in that spot, and then the performance that the guy put in. Because to me, that level of confidence in a player is what I think Slot is starting to do with this side. And I mean, I think Nunez looks like a completely different player the last 2 or 3 matches, and this year compared to the last 2. I've said all along, I think the best front 3 at this club is Nunez, Gakpo, and Mo. And I think you saw it for periods before he made the substitutions in this match. So for me, there's so many more positives than negatives when it comes to the rotation and the players. And I think it's because more players are getting an opportunity to shine from the beginning of matches, which I think makes all of them more confident when they're asked to play their part. Unlike before, where they got 10 minutes at the end to show their worth.
And I think, we're kind of seeing, obviously, the changes that are coming a lot earlier, Bickler. And he kind of has a different way that we're probably going to have to get used to slowly. One thing that I thought Klopp was great at was passing out praise to players that maybe didn't get noticed. So after a game where maybe Mo had 2 goals, he would talk about, Bobby's assist and stuff like that. When he's asked about that, he would kind of take that positive and send it there. Slot, basically, his actions kind of hold players accountable, like he did with Kwanzaa. I do agree with Robertson. He talked about Robertson not having a preseason, so doing more. But I mean, that's what I mean. He does that, Victor, where he kind of does we had to do more rotation because he didn't have preseason. Oh, Kwanzaa had played a lot midweek. That's why I put Joe Gomez and stuff like that. So while he protects the player, maybe to the media, he's still kind of showing a lot more accountability based on performances.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that's a cultural thing. I feel like the Dutch are just kind of straight shooters like that, and they're okay with that, right? And so maybe that's a mentality thing. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. I don't agree with all the decisions he makes. I thought hooking Kwanzaa when he did, I didn't like that move I guess if I'm a manager, I'd rather let the player make the second mistake and then deal with the cleanup than make that call and then, damage his psyche. But like, so I haven't agreed with everything he's done, but I think he's done a really, really good job. What I like a lot about him is like when like just a lot of these things that are happening with these players, I think are just little sort of managerial differences between him and Klopp. Like, I love the fact that like Trent talks about when he came to him and he was expecting to get this whole third degree on his defending. And basically he showed him tape for like 15 minutes and was like, look, instead of being like here, and here we can improve, he was like, here, and here, you just turn 8 degrees and you're there. Yeah. Like, instead of like, we need to improve this, like, hey, do this and you're there. Like, and I think like, especially for the younger players, like the younger generation, that resonates more than with the hard nose over the top approach. Right. So I think he is firm, and I think he does put people out there and hang him out a little bit if he feels like they need it. But I think he's also really, really emotionally intelligent in the way that he teaches, just from the little bit that I've read.
Yeah, so just that slot is a great problem. I don't remember a game other than the Forest game where even the subs come on and play like they have a point to prove. And I think that kind of goes back to what I'm saying, because they know, and this is not a knock on Klopp or whatever, maybe because there is more rotation than what we're used to. And maybe those performances do get rewarded. For example, I mean, we'll talk about, the Leverkusen game towards the end, but like I do expect Joe Gomez to be out there, for example, tomorrow, assuming like he will get rewarded for that performance. And that's, if you're a bench player or if you're being rotated, that is a great incentive to go out there and do your thing. Because we've seen it in the past where we've had rotation pieces or bench players come in, do their job, do well, and never to be seen again for another month until the next League Cup came around or something like that.
And I think we've seen it, right? We saw it with Szoboszlai, fell off the boil a little bit. Jones got a couple starts, and then he started a few more games in a row. Then everyone was like, why would you start Jones against Arsenal? You need to play Szoboszlai. It's like, wait, whoa. Everyone was just slagging this fucker off for the last month and a half, making fun of him and, can't do anything right and 70-pound bust and all this stuff. So, look, we're finicky. This is what we do, and we're going to be this way. I think Slot has actually shown that he understands the players a little bit more. I mean, we all talk about Gravenberch and how wonderful it is. If they signed Zubimendi in the summer like they planned, this renaissance might not have even happened, because Zubimendi might have started next to Maka at the beginning of this season, and Gravenberch is fighting like Jones and Szoboszlai and everyone else for minutes. So sometimes it's just opportunity meets time, right? And like that gives you the chance, but he supports those players to do it. I just hope that they support him with filling the squad with 2 or 3 more guys, because I do think he is becoming overly reliant on McAllister and Gravenberch the way Klopp did Genie and Fab. And we saw what that would do later in seasons when the wheels start to come off and we want to go deep in the Champions League. So, we can make all the jokes about the Tyler Mortons and the Curtis Joneses but those guys are going to have to play big boy minutes if this team isn't going to strengthen, or a Neoni's going to need to come on, because I'm not sure it's fully deep enough, but I do think that the manager has figured out how to rotate the players. And I think he figured it out a hell of a lot faster than the last guy did.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's like slightly unfair, or maybe like he had lessons to learn. I'm not sure. I do agree, though, fully, that I feel like he realizes, and even though he admitted that he was not used to the intensity of the Premier League and stuff like that, he does realize that you need to do the rotation and do it regularly, and then you got to pull the plug when you need to, and can't kind of like I think that's like a part of the learning curve as well. You can't get like let Premier Leagues gain momentum, because all these teams do have quality and they can really punish you. This is not like the Dutch league in that sense. But Bicker, out of that game, what is your most positive takeaway? What is your biggest negative takeaway?
Ooh, biggest negative takeaway.
Let's start with the negatives. I think there was a lot of positives. So let's do the negative.
Yeah, biggest negative. I guess the biggest negative that I took away from this game is that I didn't see anything that showed me that Trent's mentality had improved His disposition still seemed really poor. I still felt like he gave the ball away a lot and he seemed disconnected. I still felt like he was trying to hit the home run ball for no reason over the top. I felt like he was playing a different game than everybody else. So I think that's probably my biggest negative, to kind of piggyback on what we've been saying with him. Biggest positive, I think my biggest positive was just the feel-good moment of the second half, not only coming back, but seeing Joe Gomez play that way. Like, he came out and he was like everything we've ever wanted Joe Gomez to be, except for a goal scorer. But anyway, like the fact that, like, yeah, came in, but like he came up and he was like cleaning up. Like, it reminded me a little bit of old school Matip, what he was doing in the midfield, where he was kind of coming in there and cleaning up and recycling possession and then moving forward as well. So, like, I love that for him. You know, we've talked about how he deserved a move. He hasn't gotten the minutes. He's been on outside of the English national setup, in and out, and not really been in it like he should be because of it. So I want all the good things for Joe Gomez. I think that this is a great opportunity for him. I don't know if Konate will be ready for the weekend, but anytime we can get him more minutes, and I love Kwanzaa, but I think this is Joe Gomez's time to have a run here. I think that, like, I was advocating for Joe Gomez at left back. That's where I was. Like, because I thought it made sense to me. You know, that's where he kind of came in and got his minutes out of the gate when he came into this side. And I could see that opportunity. But that was my feel-good moment, just because I thought, you know, he's been buried for so long. To see him emerge from the shadows and put in that kind of performance in that spot was awesome.
So, Konate said he's ready for the next match, but I'm assuming
that doesn't mean he has to play.
Yeah, they're going to be like, that's fine, but why don't you take your hand and sit over here with your wrist? And then, like, just take some notes.
I mean, honestly, this whole, like, I'll be ready for the next match, and everyone's like, well, I'll send him right back out there for 90 minutes. I'm like, did you guys forget this is Ibrahim Konate, who normally plays 6 out of 10 and then misses 11? Like,
yeah, I mean, there's no reason for it, really, especially for this game. I can understand if this was like, you know, like you're playing City or something like that, and you really need him out there. But especially the way we started Champions League, and, you know, we'll talk about that. But, you know, in terms of getting these 3 points in the Champions League enables you to do more of this as we move along. But what is your positive, negative takeaway from the week?
So I would agree with Bickler. My negative would definitely have been Trent's first half. I thought Trent looked better in the second half. Like, and I do believe that he was spoken to during halftime. Like, I think Schlock did a few things at halftime. I think he addressed some of the play around the midfield. I think he hit on some of the hero balls and getting away from playing your own style and playing our style. And I also think he tweaked some tactics that made it a little bit more condensed and a little bit more tucked in. And I think it almost like put him in a box a little bit. And it was like, this is what we need to do. We need to keep possession. We need to not give Brighton the ball. And then we'll go forward and we'll find our opportunities. I thought Trent had some really positive points defending in the second half, which is probably the first time all year long I've said that. And he had a few 1v1 defensive moments. There was that time he had the big clearance, right? I think he picked Gomez up at one point and had he came back and tracked back. And I was like, who is this number 66 coming back and defending? Like, he just followed someone into the box. I didn't know that he knew how to do that. That's his job. And he celebrated like a guy who didn't like he celebrated like he was Nunez, and he just had that like defensive play on the end line. And he's like, yeah. I thought there were times where Trent looked better. I think my problem is that I'm reading into Trent's actions because Trent is talking enough to put those thoughts in my mind. So when I see bad body language, when I see him look dejected, moping around the pitch, hitting hero balls, and the manager screaming at him. And I always joke with this. Like, we used to always say, Klopp would like scream at players straight, and then you could tell when they were the ones being yelled at because they were the only player who wouldn't look back at the sideline. Trent doesn't even have to look. Arne Slot just yells at Trent consistently the entire time he's on the pitch. And that, to me, makes me know he's still not doing what's being asked. And I don't think it's long before we start to see Bradley, now that he's fit, getting starts and getting minutes. Like, I think that's coming just like what's happening to Robertson. Because you made the comment, and I still don't think we know what type of a fullback Arden Slot wants. But I'm pretty sure it is not the profile that made Andy Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold 1A, the best fullbacks in the world under Jurgen Klopp, because he's not deploying them in that way. Just doesn't feel like that's what he asks of those players. And I don't know if either of them long-term fit into what this manager wants to do.
And maybe because Bradley has not been, lighting it up, especially defensively as well. And honestly, like I did not think Trent was poor defensively this game, but that's probably every time I watch this, and you're probably right, Gally, because of all the talking he's doing on the sideline, and not all his fault. Obviously, he's constantly being asked, but there are ways. These guys know how to avoid questions. There's some shit we can never find out about, so they know how to freaking avoid those questions, obviously. But he's just playing a different game than everybody else, and like it's kind of like it annoys me when I see Nunez getting it, and he's probably the last guy in the class to get a passing grade when you're talking tactics, right? You would assume. And so I know Trent knows. I think he just likes that glory a lot more, and that's why I don't know if he likes a system where the right back maybe is not going to go out for the Ballon d'Or, because that's not really nothing that he does is going to be that fancy to get him that. So Bickler, like, why do you see it changing? It's suddenly they announced the extension the next international break or something like that, or in January it's all said and done and he's going to Madrid or something like that. Is that going to end it, or how do you see it ending? Because I've been saying this for months, and slowly everybody's coming around. Because like Gally's saying, as he's talking, people are watching probably a bit more carefully. But I've been saying this for like games where he's just like chugging. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, stop these stupid diagonals that are never getting there. And here's another thing. I think when he does those passes, when they connect, it's like, oh man, the range. When it doesn't, you're like, what the hell are you doing? Like, why are you just like passing to their center midfielder and now we're exposed? But when do you see it changing, Bickler? Do you see it changing?
Oh man, I picture Trent having to do like his defensive homework and he's in his bed staring at his like Ronaldo poster. Like I feel like that's what this feels like. I do think I agree with Gally, man. I like in terms of the fact that I don't think what we remember Trent and Robbo doing when they just basically tore up both channels and were the best in the world at it. I don't think that really fits what this system does, right? So I do think it's only a matter of time when you've got Trent at the age he is, what the value is at, and what you could get for him. I think there's only a matter of time until like somebody like Edwards takes an opportunity to make the most out of that and sort of reinvent the side. And I think that probably – Arne Slot is probably at the front of the line advocating for that. You know what I mean? Which I think we all assume that like if Trent leaves, it's because he wants to go elsewhere. And to Gally's point that he's been banging on for a couple months, it may not really be up to him. And this is starting to feel like a manager who has a very specific idea of what he wants and what he needs out of players. And when we get that, and we said that it would take some time for him to evaluate, but when we got there were going to be some surprises. And I think this will probably not be like a huge surprise for a lot of people who paid attention. But if you're like a casual fan, or if you have not really sort of come to grips with like what happens when there's a new manager and changeover, like I think that this was going to surprise a lot of people, and it probably shouldn't.
And I think he could be one of those, I don't know, to make like he might not be looking for that type of player and feels like they have to overspend to get the right back that he needs. Like, I don't need a right back that's making $500,000 a week. That's not what the system requires, kind of a thing, because that's not as important to me. I don't know, like like I say, to make a American analogy, since we're like more familiar with sports, it's like NFL. You could be like, what, I'll spend the money on the offensive line. Any running back can run behind those huge holes. Correct. Kind of a thing. Or you can do it the other way around, and you can go for like star players and say, hey, we'll get them the ball and they'll do whatever. So it's different ways of approaching it, and that's how you're going to kind of determine where you're going to spend your money. I guess when the question is going to be, when do we address the disconnect? Because to me, at least, maybe because I'm watching it really carefully for one reason or another, that the disconnect is very clear. And how long do we kind of like, how long does Slot tolerate that, Gally? Because we talked about him pulling Kwanzaa, him pulling this, and like making changes a lot earlier. Is a lack of options, or he feels like he can turn Trent around slowly? similar to Mo, who's now constantly back defending.
Yeah, I maybe he feels he can turn him around slowly. My argument would be this. Have you seen any change to Trent Alexander-Arnold's game other than getting more physically like built and fit and ready to compete since the day he came up? He came up an attack-minded player who was really small and slight for a fullback, who had an amazing right foot and could pick apart a pass and send these pinging balls across and saw a pass. He had that when he was 18 and no one knew his two last names, and he showed up at Old Trafford that day. To me, this is a prime example of a player who got told he was world class at 19, who wasn't, who was really freaking good. But he got told he was the best right back in the world when he started 2 Champions League finals before his 21st birthday, and then he won a Premier League medal. I just feel like in some ways this is a guy whose professional acumen was set back by so many successes early and no failures, no real faults to him. And then you're the hometown kid and everybody loves you and I'm going to be captain someday, and they got a mural. I mean, the guy had a mural on a house in downtown Liverpool when he was a teenager. That shit doesn't happen. It's not supposed to happen. You're supposed to earn that. And he feels to me like a guy who at 26, 27, whatever age he is, feels like he has done everything in this game you need to do, to the point where your arrogance in a year that you are up for a contract in your hometown and you're the vice captain of the club, you're talking about being the Ballon d'Or, when all the talk is how this is the first Ballon d'Or winner since 2009 to come from the Premier League, and he's a holding midfielder. So you're not winning as a right back unless maybe you're at a club like Madrid. Like, it was almost like his way of using another excuse for when he goes to why he went. And to be honest, I said this before, I hope he resigns and is here a long time, improves. If he goes there, I will root for him to fail every minute of every game. And I expect it to happen too, by the way, because those supporters don't care about foreigners. They booed Beckham.
Don't care about anybody, really.
No, I mean, they whistled off Karim Benzema for 5 years straight, and then he replaced Ronaldo as the front of the club. They were like, we love you. They called Modric a bum at the beginning because he wasn't good enough coming from Tottenham. He will be, if he thinks it's critical now, wait till the Madrid papers. They will be whistling at him for every one of his nonchalant. He'll be replaced twice. And he'll be playing at Villarreal or one of these other clubs in Spain, because he will be a prime example. This is Michael Owens all over again, in my opinion. He leaves England for Spain. In my opinion, it is the end of him as a top echelon world-class player.
Alan says Trent is a genius, is an all-might. I don't know. I almost feel like for all three of them, the current run is making excuses a lot more difficult as well. Because, when you talk about winning ambition and stuff like that, if we were kind of rebuilding, I think it's a lot easier to say, yeah, I want to go somewhere where we're going to win. This looks like it might take a while. And now, you're on top of the league. That kind of like takes that entire narrative away. And I know people try to still push that off there, but I don't think it. And I don't know. I mean, I can understand, it's not like, don't want to make it like a hating on Trent session again, but and I can understand he might feel like, I don't know, I've been there where like you feel like you achieved everything where you're gonna achieve it, and it starts getting almost boring a little bit. And I know this is a different field and they're like the adrenaline and everything, but overall you're day in and day out going to your practice and stuff like that, doing everything that you have to do to be able to perform on the weekend. Sometimes when things almost like came, like you're saying, Gally, too easy, too early for one, and then the success comes with it. Everything you can possibly do, you did. You won the league, you won the Champions League and stuff like that. So maybe he does want another challenge. And if he does, more power to him. But I hate to say it, I do agree with Gelly. I would kind of like root against every minute. But I hate to say it. It doesn't sound good, but it is what it is. I do agree. I can't lie. I will root against it because I just feel like I've been saying this for months, where I can always see Van Dijk going somewhere and saying making like a professional decision, blah blah. Mo going to Saudi Arabia making $500,000 or whatever, professional decision, blah blah. But this is you, like you are the club, and you're going around saying I want to be a captain and stuff like that. I hold him to a different standard, and that might not be fair, but it is what it is.
I root for Johnny Damon to turn an ankle every time he walks out of his like beach house on some beach, retired drunk. I root for him to get hurt. I root for Saquon Barkley to blow out a knee every time he walks on the field in Philadelphia. Like I have no problem saying.
So you didn't like it when he was jumping backwards over people?
I could care
To
less.
be fair, that wasn't Saquon's call though.
No, and it was the right decision by both sides, to be honest. Yeah, and I have no issues because when the playoffs come around, Saquon will do what he does, which is probably get hurt and not play any meaningful minutes.
I just hate that he went to the worst fan base in the league. But anyway, that's
arguably
yeah. Let's get back
the
to
worst fan base in all of sport.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mike, if you're listening, Mike, we apologize to all you Philly listeners out there, but yeah, terrible.
Okay, let's get to tomorrow real quick. Number one, lineup wise, I mean, I think this will kind of like answer both questions at once, Bickler. But how much value do you put to this game in terms of like a must win and got to get the 3 points? And in relation to that, like how much rotation do you do?
Considering the start to this Champions League and where they're at the table, I rotate heavy here.
And you're okay with the draw then, I assume, if
Yes.
that ends up being what it is?
Yes.
I think we're on the same page. I was saying that this morning. I don't know why I feel like that, but in some ways, though, Gally, you know, if we did win, obviously it makes the last couple of games a total rubber game where you can like treat it like a League Cup game.
I think if you win tomorrow, you are guaranteed to move through in this format of some kind. I think if you win tomorrow and get one more victory, then you're guaranteed in the top 8, if not the top 4. Which I think could really be beneficial when you start to think about now you're playing teams 18 to 24 in that next round. And I think that's where this seeding becomes really interesting. I think there'll be rotation tomorrow. It won't be as heavy as I would like. I would start Endo tomorrow. I don't think he will. Like, I would consider starting like Endo and Jones. And if he wasn't willing to do that, I'd start Endo and Morton. Like, I think Gravenberch and Maka need a break. I don't think he'll sit both of them. But I think they both need a break. I think the big keys for tomorrow is probably just keep running Nunez back out there because Jota's not ready yet. You rotate Diaz. Mo just plays every minute of every match. And then you do what you do in the back line. Are you starting Kelleher tomorrow or you give the third keeper a start?
No, I'm starting Kelleher tomorrow. I think you tell Jarosh, hey, League Cup is yours at this stage, even when
I'd argue so far that I actually believe the third keeper's.
Oh, I think we lost Gally.
Yeah. Yes, his point, third keeper has outplayed Keller for sure. I still think
I don't know, man. There's that moment. He has made some crucial saves. That 1-0, 1v1 where Van Dijk kind of pushes him. That's a huge turning point in that game, for example. He has made some big saves. I mean, the goal we considered this weekend, for example, I mean, hence we saw that 10 minutes later, Ferdi had another opportunity and didn't take it.
You say that, but 2 different goalkeepers said that his footwork is so poor because he's so far over that he gives Ferdi that post. And if that's Allison, he's actually has the better angles. That's always been my argument recently with watching Kelleher. Is I think the positions he takes up on the pitch and how he defends his box, both coming in and going out. And I think we saw it as well on the side goal, where we all said that Allison might do better there because he'll anticipate where that is. I think the footwork so far has been a little bit skeptical at times of Kelleher. Don't get me wrong. I know Kelleher.
Yeah, but I mean, we've only seen Jarosh one game, so hard to put Jarosh's footwork better than Kelleher when we've only seen him one game. That's where I'm at. I don't think we have enough of a sample size.
But he started for his country at a Euros. I was more or less saying he started for his country at a Euros. He's actually played pretty well when given opportunities. I'm not saying that you have to. There's talk that the Allison injury is not moving as fast as they're hoping. It could be even longer. If that's the case, I do think you have to be ready. I also have before. I think this kid's going to be the number 2 as early as maybe January, because I think the right bids come in this January for Kelleher, and they may sell the player. So to me, I do think you get him some minutes. So maybe to your point, maybe he gets a dead rubber in the Champions League down the line, or he starts the next EFL Cup against Southampton. But I think strategically you should get the guy some minutes, because I worry that it's not going the way Kelleher wanted this to go, which is his next big move is a starting spot somewhere.
Yeah, but I mean, we just talked about earlier saying we want to strengthen in January, not go backwards. I don't know if Jarish is ready for that. Yeah, like I say, the sample size to me is not big enough, but I would definitely throw him out there for any fact. The thing is, you have to also bear in mind is the defense that's going to play in front of him, and they probably know that a lot better than we do in terms of how much faith do the center backs, the back four have with the guy behind you, because it really impacts how you play as a defender, the relationship you have with the guy behind you, like how much confidence you have. Do you say, yeah, you can crank a shot from there because I trust my guy, or do you play differently? Because it affects how you play as a defender based on how much confidence you have in the back. And we've seen this in the past where, people have done some crazy things when they didn't have Ali behind them and stuff. But Bickler, let's do some predictions on the way out. I know starting 11 is kind of like a shot in the dark. So let's go straight to result predictions.
Oh, it's real tough not to go the slot special here. But yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go 2-1.
How about you, Gally?
I'm going to go more goals because of more rotation. I say it's 3-2 victory. Maybe even like a 3-1 where we concede a late one. But I think we do get all 3 points tomorrow. I think we're playing too good, and I don't think Leverkusen has had a good start to the season. And I think this is a lot of pressure on Javi to show up tomorrow and put in a performance.
Yeah, I mean, plus it's like a European night thing going, and I really thought, obviously everybody's talking about it too, that the Anfield was the loudest it's been in a long time. So I'm hoping, that kind of wakes up Anfield a bit more too, knowing that, they can have a full impact 24/7 and not wait for Trent to get into a fight kind of a deal. So I'm hoping the European night thing and all that, and not a lot of rotation like you guys are saying. I don't think we're going to have wholesale rotation going on. I'm going with the 2-1 victory as well. I think we do concede one just because of the rotation partially, but it would be a huge 3 points, and hopefully it will kind of make games easier down the road. Alan is going with 2-1 as well. That'll be it for us this week. We probably could go on for hours, really. It was quite the weekend to talk about. There's a lot going on in the Premier League as well, but do tune in on Wednesday night to the panel show. We'll address a lot of those general Premier League stuff. Tomorrow, the Premier League show with Galli and Victor will be coming out as well. And then tomorrow, do tune in for the pre-match. We'll be here right after the lineups come out to talk about that, and right here for the post-match as well. If you have not done so, why the hell not? Head on over to YouTube. Give us a subscribe. We're almost reaching that 1,000 mark. So we can use all the help. Grab a friend by the ear, drag their butt over here, have them give us a follow, 960 or something like that. So we only need 40 friends with 40 ears to get to that 1,000 over there. But have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you guys next week on our 300th podcast.